and welcome to Wires from the Deep, a Silo Series podcast. Today is Wednesday, November 27, 2024, and you're listening to episode 18, Here and Back Again. I'm your host, Krista Watanabe, here with my host, Angela Traficante.
Hello.
All right, so we just watched episode 3 of season 2 for Silo, which is called Solo, and it jumps right into it, right? It opens with Solo or the man in vault, right? He introduces himself as Solo, and he says that it's because he's in there all by himself. And Juliet says that she gives him her name, and he knows what Romeo and Juliet is, which I thought was interesting, right?
Yeah, that's always kind of confused me because why would anyone know of this like before Time's play? Also, one with such questionable content.
Yeah. Also, that reminds me, I pointed out to Angela that I say interesting too much, so I'm going to try not to say interesting. I always say that's interesting. That's interesting. I don't want to say interesting anymore. Anyway, so he asks which silo she came from, and then he tells her that there are 50 silos. Then he confirms that they're in 17 and that the closest ones are 15, 16, and 18. So she doesn't know that she comes from 18, so she can't tell him. And I was just curious, like, why does he mention, I mean, obviously because they're in sequential numbers, so obviously they'd be next to 17, but that does make me wonder, like, how they're situated. Does that mean that is on the edge of where the others are because there's 3 surrounding them? I don't know. It just made me start thinking, like, where 17 is in the scheme of, like, all these 50 silos.
Oh, I was also wondering if it was that he was talking about their positions or simply that he knows things about silos and he could already know that adjacent silos are dead or don't have any people in them. So maybe he
Yeah.
mentioned the only ones he knows that have people around.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned the edge thing is because, like, if they're in the middle, right, then that would mean that there would be more than just 3 surrounding him. Like, wouldn't there be others, like in like other rows? You know what I mean? Like lesser numbers and things like that, or higher numbers too, other than just the adjacent numbers.
It's true. This would be a sort of weird setup if, for instance, 17 were on an edge, but then 15, 16, and 18 were the ones like on each like cardinal direction from them. That would be kind of weird.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, if you're planning to have 50 silos, you would have it in like some kind of, like, I don't know, in a square or a circle. I don't know. I don't even know why that's important, but I just thought it was. Oh my god! I was gonna say it again. I was gonna say interesting. See, it's a sickness. I have an interesting syndrome.
I was more curious about like the fact that there are 50. Like 50 is a lot of silos. 50 is
Yeah.
probably more than I think anyone was thinking there were, even from seeing that overhead shot. I don't know. It seemed higher than I was expecting.
Hmm. Okay, so Solo then goes into the story about the people outside, because what did she says something that asked him, but he says that no one forced the people to go out and that they chose to leave. And he says it was a nice day, that everyone was smiling, and then he mentions dust started to blow and that the poison came back. So I don't know, that gives us some context for what they have to deal with outside. I mean, is the dust relevant, or is it just something that he just mentions? Like something I don't remember from this first season if they can see dust blowing in the air. Do you?
I don't remember either. It looks pretty still outside the camera, like the few times they show it, but it's hard
Yeah.
to tell.
Yeah.
I'm also not entirely convinced Solo's the best narrator to believe either,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't know if you can honestly take anything he's saying as like 100% accurate recall at this point.
Yeah. Anyway, Jill says, or she asks him how they survive longer than 3 minutes, and that gave a bit of a clue as to how long they usually watch these people outside.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like when you think about like Holston's cleaning and
Yeah.
stuff, it really wasn't that long at all.
But she does seem to be confused about all those people outside, because she seems to think that he's saying that they were surviving outside longer than that. And if you think about it, it takes kind of a long time for that many people to get out of one ramp. And so it kind of sounded like she was asking how is it that they even got that far with no suit, because the people with the suits die in 3 minutes, right? But they went out with no suits,
I mean, maybe it's that the suits don't matter.
or it just
Like
gives you like a
we
little bit of extra time,
yeah, or like yeah, a marginal
or it's just
amount.
all just a show. You mean?
Although she did last quite a while, like compared to, I guess, other cleanings. When we think about how she got all the way down into Silo 17.
Yeah. Okay, so he confirms that Russell was the head of IT, because last week I was saying that I was just guessing that that's what he was, and Solo confirms that he was Russell's shadow, and that Russell's the one that put him in the vault, and he was told never to let anyone in. And we've seen inside the vault at Silo 18, so we understand what he's protecting and why he's told never to let anyone in. Because I mean, if you think about like it kind of seems like the only person who sees that book the order is one person and their shadow, although I don't even know what this person is called.
You mean like the person with the role itself? The
Yeah,
mentor,
yeah,
I guess? I don't know. Yeah. It does certainly I agree. It does seem like, for instance, like Bernard is like the only person who has seen this book, and we'll get into it later, but Meadows clearly has too.
yeah. Okay, so he tells Jules about Ron, a guy named Ron Tucker who didn't clean, and because the people in the silo didn't see him die, they thought that it was safe outside. And so Jules realizes what that means for her silo. And then he actually explains about how that thing, that the word lies got written on the wall screen, which I thought was really cool, because I thought it was just something that somebody wrote. But at the same time, when I was thinking about it, I was like, why why would they write it on that particular part of the wall screen? But it turns out it was because Ron Tucker wrote lies backwards on the camera lens outside, and then they wrote over it. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I liked that explanation. I think it's very eerie too, which is kind of adds to the atmosphere. Um, it did strike me as kind of odd though how Jules reacted to this whole piece of information. Like, maybe they did this so that the audience would kind of have like a clear thing to latch onto as a cause and effect, but Jules had to know her lack of cleaning was going to cause issues, and she had to know that disappearing from sight would cause issues, and she already kind of knew things were happening in the silo and trouble was brewing. So I don't know, like it seemed weird to me that she was suddenly like, oh my god, it's my fault that something bad might happen over there. And I'm like, really? You needed Solo to tell you this story to put that together?
I mean, I don't know, because I mean, I think when she headed out, she went through a whole range of thoughts, right? She went out thinking she was gonna die, and I don't know that she would have thought about the effect of her just walking over a hill and how that would cause everyone to wanna break out and everything. Because I don't know. I mean, she obviously just, I don't know that she had rebellious thoughts on her mind. She was just really pissed that she was basically framed and sent outside to die, right? So,
Yeah, she was definitely in like survival mode once she was out there. But I don't know that she thought that she was going to end up over in this new silo, and that somehow everything was fine back home seemed a little like naive to me. But maybe it's also like partially wishful thinking too. Like I think she probably does want to get back to a place that's habitable and has people
hmm
she knows and likes and cares about.
I think the other thing that can speak to this is that Jules is kind of like a insular kind of person. She's kind of a loner, right? Except for George. So she doesn't really have like a silo wide kind of thinking. This is kind of like a new concept for her when she becomes sheriff. And so I don't think she has the kind of thoughts that would make her think that everybody would want to follow her outside, you know? She probably just thinks of herself as like a singular person and not really someone that everybody wants to like follow. Like, I don't know that she feels that like she's like a martyr type, you know, or a leader of a rebellion kind of thing. I think if she knew that people were writing Juliet lives on the walls and stuff, it would probably shock her.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a very, like, Katniss Everdeen thing, like,
Yeah,
"Oh
yeah.
god, what did I do, and
And why
how
are
can
these
I
people
stop
following
it?"
me?
'Cause Katniss the whole time is just like, "Oh my god, the more I do, like, to try and stop this, the more they follow me," and
Yeah,
yeah, it's probably what is
exactly.
happening to Jules too.
Yeah. Okay, and then the episode shifts us back to 18, where Teddy, one of the mechanics, is being arrested for graffiti, and then they show everyone meeting in Walker's workshop. They're talking to Teddy's mom, and Teddy's mom says that he hasn't been framed, that he did write the graffiti, but that it's their walls and that they can mark it up. And then Shirley vows that they're not going to let him be made an example of. So that kind of like sows the seed of what's coming, how they're ramping up. Like it's not just Juliet now. Now it's like they're affecting the people at Mechanical. But then that ties into what happens in the next scene. Bernard takes Meadows into the server room and vault, and she doesn't look like this is her first time in there, right?
No, definitely not, and she talked about, like, right after that, she says she tried to forget the order, which makes me
Yeah,
think she'd seen it a
read
lot
it.
and knew
Yeah.
it and read it.
I mean, if she was his shadow, she was probably supposed to like study it and everything. So she's probably read the whole thing at least once.
Yeah, this is, like, another thing where I'm like, "I can't believe they just let her, like, go live her normal life
Yeah,
after this."
yeah.
Like, she's one of, like, 2 people with this information in the entire silo, and Bernard was like, "Yeah, whatever, don't worry about it." Like,
I know this is baffling me. I don't understand because not only does she know this stuff, but she just like doesn't seem to give a shit, right? Like she just basically leaves him in the lurch to like be the person in charge of like knowing all this stuff and taking care of all this stuff. And so I don't know like and like in this episode they talk about the memory drug. So why didn't he have her take the memory drug and she just wipe that out and like find a new shadow? Like I don't know where this is all coming from or where this is all going. I'm very confused. But she does talk about some of what's in the order, which includes cracking down on graffiti and anything that glorifies the person who failed to clean. And the way she says it, this was amusing because the way she says it, she's just like calling him out, right? Because he just made a speech
yeah.
like turning her into a hero for not cleaning and testing the tape and everything. So I don't
It felt
know.
very chastising, which also felt really rich coming from this woman who, like, gave up this position.
Yeah. But did you think that she was like low key threatening him or
I don't know what she'd be threatening him with, but, I
yeah.
mean, maybe. It's hard to tell. It seems like the only person that'll even do anything for her or listen to her is him,
Yeah.
so I don't know what she would be threatening exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And so Bernard confirms that Juliet Lives is still being written everywhere and how people have taken out most of the cameras below 120. And I thought in season one, most people didn't know that there were cameras. So,
Oh, I don't think anyone knew, like, I think that was supposed to be, like, a reveal, so
yeah. So I kind of thought he said that pretty casually. I thought that that would be a bigger deal because they had talked in the first season how it's increasingly hard to fix the cameras and get them replaced when they go down. But now they're basically blind for in the entire down deep. So I don't know. I kind of thought he mentioned it a little. He was almost blasé about it. Oh yeah, we can't watch what's going on below here.
I also am wondering, like, how did that information spread so quickly to get
Yeah,
all the cameras down? But I guess it's not that. I guess below 120 is there aren't that many floors below 120.
yeah. Although I do wonder, like I can't remember who knew. Was it Patrick and Danny? Maybe.
I think Jules also told people when she discovered it. I can't remember who, but, like, Shirley maybe. I don't know.
Okay, so Bernard tells Meadows that that Juliet was caught with a 200-year-old cleaning video, and then he lies to her about Jules saying she wanted to go out. So I don't understand why he's lying to her about this because yeah, I don't know why, because she knows everything that he does, or almost everything that she does. So why, what is the point of him lying about why she went out? Do you think there's something in the order that he can be deposed if he's doing certain things like this?
I honestly don't know. I kind of yeah, I don't know about that specifically, but I get the impression that he just, like, doesn't wanna deal with her and that he doesn't actually wanna bring her in on any of this anymore, and so I think he was possibly lying in just an attempt to get her to, like, drop it and, like, stay out of everything.
But then why would he take her to the vault, right? Is it just for privacy? Because they talk in her apartment too.
Yeah, and they talk about, like, similar levels of stuff in terms of, like, security and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
knowledge in both places.
So do you think her apartment is like she isn't being surveilled? Like there's no cameras in her apartment? Because I would feel like if it's being surveilled and like the people in janitorial are watching like that kind of stuff, they don't have that high clearance for, so but so they
I
feel
did
like they
wonder
can
about
talk
that.
freely, right?
Yeah, they can talk freely, and also all the stuff she has is just, like, out there on
Yeah.
display, and people are constantly traipsing in and out of her apartment, and, like, they don't seem to care, like, Bernard doesn't care, and Jules, like, didn't care back when she saw the apartment, and I don't know. I feel like more people should be caring.
Her apartment is like a giant plot hole. Like, right? Like why is she allowed to have this? Why is she allowed to have
Well,
all these
because, like,
things in?
later Billings is also in her apartment, and he's, like,
Yeah,
asking
yeah,
about her relics like he doesn't care that she has them.
yeah. It's baffling. uh, okay, and then Meadows tells him to release Teddy, and then she reveals some important things from the Order, which is that part of their plan is to blame Mechanical and unite the rest of the silo against them. So I don't know. Did you think about why it would say that? Because, I mean, what is the goal there? Is it to tamp down rebellion and drug them all and make them all forget so they can go back to running this out? Because, I don't know. I mean, they're the most important people because they control the power. So, I don't know. Is it just to just be able to storm the most important place and take control of it on their own? Or
Yeah, I assumed it was kind of for that, like, just to get a larger number of people united against a smaller number of people, but also I kind of assumed it was because they want to discredit Mechanical. Like,
mm,
I think they think, like, "Oh, if weird information starts coming out from Mechanical, we want people, the rest of the silo people, to believe us and not them." So, like, we wanna make them sound like crazy conspiracy theorists, and we're the correct ones.
yeah, actually, that actually sounds like has real world parallels, but I don't want to get into that. So that's dangerous territory. But then Meadows asks if Juliet could have survived, and then Bernard says that 17 was dead before she was his shadow, which gives us some kind of timeline help. Because I think they've been throwing around the number 25 for the amount of years that she's been in a drunken haze. So Silent 17, the flashback that we saw in the first episode, it happened at least that long ago. And you have to like take that into consideration for how long Solo's been alone and like how old he could possibly be and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I was wondering too because I think people start shadowing at a fairly young age
yeah,
too, so I thought,
yeah,
like, it may have even been significantly longer if she, say, started shadowing, like, in her
yeah.
teens or something, which would kinda jive, like, if you think about Solo's age and he was a shadow and
Mm-hmm.
kind of his age now, so I could see, like, 30-ish years, give or take, like, maybe it's a bit more. I mean, I'm curious about how Bernard knew that. I don't think he was guessing. Like, I guess he could have been guessing based on like what he saw through Jules's helmet, like the state of the bodies and whatnot. But I mean, it feels like he knew, like he had been told,
Mm-hmm.
and we know who, but who would have told him?
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, because it kind of sounded like he didn't have contact with other silos, and we talked about that I think in the last episode. But maybe he has some form of contact, just not, maybe not speaking. Maybe he can just receive messages or something, you know?
Yeah, you'd think if he could have contact with other people, he'd be, I don't know, contacting them. This is a pretty serious situation that's going on here, but maybe not. There's probably a protocol for that,
Yeah.
if it exists. Like there seems to be a protocol for everything. So
I mean, maybe it's something where he doesn't get to get details, but he's just given like, I don't know, some kind of like old fashioned telegram
update.
or like an
Yeah,
email, just a notification. Silo 17 is gone, something like that. Okay, and then Jules begins searching for a suit, and she sees Ron Tucker lives written on a calendar, which is funny because people are writing Juliet lives, so I guess people in the silos think pretty similarly. And then she saw we want to go out on another door. And this ties back to the graffiti mentioned in the order. I guess they predicted that that's a natural thing that people are going to start doing, is writing on the walls when they start going crazy, wanting to go out and stuff like that. And then Sims
I
and
think
Bernard,
that has yeah, I think that has real world parallels too.
yeah,
So I think it's pretty natural to think to like
yeah,
write a law that way or whatever it is.
yeah. Okay, and then Sims and Bernard's meet, and then Sims confirms that they're basically drugging a bunch of people to try to control things, which kind of, I don't know. I this was a little confusing for me too, because if they can do that, then why don't they just do that for, I don't know. I mean, for a bunch of people, you know, maybe, although maybe they just have a limited supply or something.
Yeah, or maybe it doesn't work that well or needs to work in a specific
Takes a
way
while.
or
Yeah.
yeah, or I don't know. Maybe you can, maybe they've been doing it a lot and you can't do it that often. It could be anything. There are a lot of sci-fi like ways you can go with how
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
forgetting medication would work.
So he mentions that Patrick and Danny are in something called judicial seclusion, and he wants Patrick, and I guess Sims brings Patrick out, and oh my god, judicial seclusion looks really brutal, right? I mean, he's
Yeah,
got
I
like a
mean,
leather gag in his mouth. He's got his thick black
and it's been
hood.
like 2 or 3 days, right? So I'm like, were you keeping him like that the whole time?
I know. It was brutal. I mean, because it's not just the belt around his mouth; it's the belt around his neck. Ugh, he looked messed up. So there's this little detail in the conversation that I missed the first time I watched it. Um, but he tells him, "Oh, I'm Sims." He says, "Oh, we all know who you are." And he basically tells him he's the boogeyman, and he's the guy that the parents tell their kids about when they want them to eat their broccoli. And I thought it was funny that something like eating your broccoli has lasted past the apocalypse. How many centuries into the future, and it's still a thing at the
It's
dinner
just
table.
human nature. It's like we were just talking about, right? Everyone in silos acts the same. All humans are the same, really. We just don't want to eat our broccoli.
I like broccoli, for the record.
Me too. I love broccoli.
Okay, and so Sims tells Patrick that he has drugs, about the drug. And so I think he's basically just offering to help him forget, right? If he does something for him.
Yeah, that's how I interpreted that. It was kind of sad that Patrick asked that too to go like all the way back so he wouldn't even remember his wife. That's like that whole conversation confused me at first though because I had completely forgotten who Patrick was and I needed to like look him up and that he actually was like the relic person who got Jules the hard drive and they like went on the run together and stuff because I literally was like who is this person and am I supposed to know about his wife?
I remembered him because I remember he had really hilarious facial expressions. Like he had like good attitude, and I liked him.
He does
Um,
kind of have like crazy eyes. I love it.
yeah, yeah. The actor does a good job with him. But it was funny the way that that conversation went down, because Sims is like, "Oh, we can take you back to before she died," and then he's like, "But what? I'm gonna just wander around looking for her?" And I was like, "Yeah, what a stupid suggestion, Sims! Like, what you're gonna make him?" go back to a point where he doesn't think she died, but where is she?
Yeah, so you have to like relive grief again. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that's not very much of an incentive, Sims. Think. Next comes the part that you mentioned where Billings goes to Meadows in her apartment, and he sees her orange circle relic.
Yeah, did you also pause and like stare at it for at least like 3 to 5 minutes, like me and my husband did? We could not figure out what it was, like, except that maybe it's one of those fancy hollow like frisbees that I've seen like on the internet here and there.
I did this last season, and I can't remember how we did it, but we Googled it, and I think on the subreddit somebody pointed out what it was. It's called an aerobie, and yeah, it's a frisbee. So
They keep showing it too and like keep talking about it, which like makes me think it's going to be relevant more, although I don't see how it could be. It's a toy, and then she does have a lot of toys. Toys seem to be like what survives these
yeah,
like purges of items,
she seems to be fixated on things that fly in the air, right?
or that like are
Like
kind of can
play,
bring you back to a nicer time.
yeah, nostalgia. Actually, that makes me think. Do you think at one point she had a kid since she's into all these toys and things?
I don't know. I don't know if it's that or if she simply sees these items and thinks they're fun and whimsical and that they're just like much lighter than her life is.
Well, because now that I think back to it, all those movies that I mean, we'll get to this later too, but like all those movies that she was watching had kids in them, right?
Yeah, I think every one of them.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll put a pin in that and come back to it. Because then Meadows questions him on whether Jules said she wanted to go out. And I thought this was curious that she's honing in on this because I don't know. Do you think that's a natural thing for her to focus on?
I'm honestly, I don't think it's a natural thing for any of them to focus on, like, except Billings makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
Billings was told by
Yeah.
Jules,
So
like,
he's
I'm being
conflicted.
framed. But yeah, everyone else, like, I would feel like, especially because Meadows doesn't know her. Like,
Yeah.
she didn't speak to her after that. She's not a close friend who would know, like, Jules's mental state or, like, what
Well,
she'd
she
want to
hasn't given a
do.
shit about anything up until this point, right?
But I think Meadows also just wants to like stick it to Bernard. So
Yeah.
I think she probably is going based off the fact that Bernard is acting shady and less about anything that she knows or doesn't know about Jules.
It just felt weird to me that she was just digging in on this right from the start. I think it would have made more sense to me if Billings had come to her first, and said, I don't know that this all lines up. And then she started digging in and like pushing Bernard on it. I think that would have made me feel less confused over it.
Yeah, I honestly didn't think that hard about it, but now that you bring it up, I'm like, oh yeah, the causality doesn't quite work as well
Yeah.
as it should.
Yeah. Okay. So Billings tells her that he has this syndrome, and then she reassures him that an allowance has been made for him and that he's fine. He gets to remain sheriff, and that they're going to try to get rid of the stigma against people. And then she mentions that she doesn't think, because I think we thought that it was like a disease, right? But she says
Yeah,
that
possibly one related to like not having sunlight or not being
yeah,
above ground or
yeah.
something.
But she says that I don't know if it's her theory or a theory, is that it's a natural human reaction to being stuck underground and not. She says something about none of them have walked longer than like 200 yards in a straight line or something.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice little like thing that really got me thinking in a circle for a second because I was like, "Oh, that's true. The silo isn't really that wide
Yeah,
from in
yeah,
diameter when you think about it." And Jules apparently doesn't know what the sun is, so
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
it
What part
makes
was
you
that?
wonder about that. That's when she's talking to
In the
he asks
earlier,
her
right?
when
He asked her.
where the sun was, and she ignores the question. Yeah, and, like, kinda gives him a funny look.
Because she doesn't know what stars are either, right? So they live with like an artificial sun in the middle of the silo, but I don't. They probably don't call it that, right? So
Yeah, I think they just have a lot of missing words because, like, obviously she doesn't know what a bird is either.
Yeah, yeah. Which is funny because they have chickens. So what do they call chickens? Just
They probably
chickens?
call them chickens, I guess. But if you have no other birds, why would you even need a
Yeah,
word
I
for
guess. I
birds, right? You
guess.
would just call every bird a chicken. Although it would be
Yeah.
weird that she kind of wouldn't know to just call them, say, a chicken, but whatever.
Well, I mean, I think there could be things that could explain it because chickens can fly, but they can't fly like really high. I guess I don't know if it's because of their weight or whatever, but ducks can fly, so I don't know. But you can clip their feathers on their wings so that they can't fly very high. So maybe it's like some kind of rule in like the farm area where like they have to keep their feathers clipped so that they don't fly and make people understand that you can fly in the air, kind of thing.
It's true. It's possible she's never even so much as seen a chicken try and fly, which
Maybe,
is the
maybe.
least elegant thing ever.
Okay, and then Solo leaves a gift for Jules outside the vault, which I don't think is a detail that escapes her at all because she's smart. She understands this got out here somehow. And he gives her chicken stew, and she like updates him on how she couldn't find enough to make a suit. She only found like a little bit of supplies, and which makes sense because I think if people wanted to go outside, even if like everybody went outside, I mean, for me, if I saw everybody wanting to run outside, I'd be like, well, I want to like wear something, so I would probably go look for materials to like even just wrap myself in, right? So it
Yeah,
makes
and
sense
I
that
got the
there's nothing left.
impression Yeah, I got the impression too that like obviously the higher up you get in the silo, like the less they're focused on actually fundamental things like building or farming or whatever. So I figure the things up top might just be generally less useful to her for this sort of thing than what you would have found if under the water essentially.
So, what did you think about Solo's joke? He says, I hope they don't get wet. And when she asks what he means, he says, oh, I was just joking. And it's been a while since he's made a joke. So,
I honestly didn't think much of it. I just thought he was really awkward and was trying to I don't know. I just thought he hasn't probably talked to a human on friendly terms in who knows, decades maybe. Like probably has no idea what he's doing.
yeah. And so he asks why she didn't clean. And she says that she saw someone else's cleaning video and she mentions that there are creatures in the sky. And he tells her that they're birds, which is what we were just talking about. And,
I love that interaction.
yeah.
She's just like, "Yeah, the whatever, the birds."
But this explanation cracked me up because this is probably one of the most frequent questions that people post on the sub all the time, all throughout the whole off season. People are like, "Why doesn't she clean?" or "Why do people clean?" and blah, blah. And then so to hear her explain it was just kind of funny because like she's talking to all of you who don't understand
Yeah, it's almost like the writers like took the knew what the questions were and knew what the theories
and wrote
about
it into
answering
the
the
show.
questions were and then just wrote it like word for word into the show.
Okay, but she has a lot of questions for him. She's like, "Why are you alive? How did he survive? How long?" And she's like, "Why do you have food?" And he tells her that he just does his job and he doesn't open the door, which is a lie because he opened the door to put her food outside. She points out the damage to the door, and actually that made me look at it. It looked like they tried to blow it up. Because there's like damage to the concrete, but the keypad looks intact, so I thought that was weird because if they tried to blow open the door, why is the keypad still there?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they knew that blowing up that part of it doesn't do anything, or maybe it's a more localized blast.
Mm. He said he likes to read, he likes to play music. She asks about the bodies and why they're not as old. And that makes him really uncomfortable and he just closes the slit because it kind of seems like he just doesn't want to talk about it. And the implication there is that he killed those people, right? So that's why he doesn't want to deal with that, talking about it, which is
Yeah, there's
understandable.
definitely something going on there. Like the fact that she asks about the bodies multiple times and she I think she either stops herself from saying something at one point or he cuts her off. I forget which, like definitely indicates there's something like more going on with those two people.
So the next part of the scene is something that a lot of people are talking about because she thanks him for the food. And he says, "I needed you to eat the food." Like that line was very like, "Oh no!" Right?
Yeah, I immediately thought she'd been poisoned or
Yeah.
drugged, and I guess I watched too many horror movies because that was my first thought because it felt really ominous.
I needed you to eat the food. Those are words you never want to hear from anybody, right?
Yeah, I was waiting for like the music cue and like the fuzziness in her vision to indicate like
Yeah,
a
exactly.
passing out or whatever.
Yeah. I thought that yeah, I thought he had drugged her, and I thought she was gonna pass out, and that she was gonna. I thought she was gonna wake up inside the vault. You know,
Like with him, or you mean he was gonna
yeah,
like
with
lock her
him.
up
No, yeah,
somewhere?
with
Oh.
him. But yeah, that's not what happened. But okay, so next Sims visits a former raider named Reggie Smalls, and they talk about how retired raiders are all being instated, and that Smalls is being sent to mechanical. And I guess Sims did him a favor in the past by giving him alone time with some guy named Archie. I don't know what happened, but it kind of sounds like I don't know. He wanted revenge, and he just wanted to like beat him up or something. I watch too much crime
Yeah.
shows, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't get why this was in the episode, but we'll get to why I kind of came to like an understanding later on in the episode. But at the time when I watched this, I was like, why are we watching this? It kind of felt like something that gets cut and gets like released as like a deleted scene because I didn't understand the relevance.
I agree. At the time when we were watching it, I was thinking like, who is this person? Why do I care? But I
Yeah.
think I know where you're going later with what you might think it's relevant for.
All right. Then they cut to Coop, and he's going to Knox, and Knox is angry with him because he had more than Cooper following Shirley around, and he knows that Cooper joined her rebellion.
Yeah, I mean, Coop is like sweet and all that, but as Walker said, this mastermind, like he clearly was not cut out for any of this.
Okay, so later on, Knox tells Shirley that he thinks he knows something about names on the wall. And when I was rewatching, I think this is what something that Cooper tells him because he said Cooper wants to tell Knox something, but they cut away from it and then they don't go back to it. But we'll come back to that. Billings meets with a raider who was there for Jules's arrest, and I think she was the one that they focused on when in that cornfield, right? So like she was watching her get arrested unjustly, and she looked conflicted. I think that was her. But yeah, he interviews her, and they don't show it, but the implication is that she's not going to be able to back up what that she said that she wanted to go out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the next is Dr. Nichols going to a garden, and he meets a woman there who says that there's going to be a bonus lottery for reproductive permission. She's questioning whether they should have a baby with everything that's going on, and she asks him if he has kids. I was like, oh, knife to the heart, my God.
Yeah, that was tough.
And so they have this whole conversation about kids and like what it's like, and then finally at the end he gives his name, and she realizes, oh my God, I've said this to the guy who just lost his daughter, and she's the only reason why I'm getting this lottery, right?
Yeah, this I can see now like why we saw him in episode 2 because we're clearly setting up like an ongoing plot line for
Yeah,
him, and I think
yeah,
it's going to have to do with like what he might see as like the future of the silo and kind of
yeah.
his own impact on it.
Okay, so it goes next to Jules. I think she's woken up. Solo is playing loud music, and I think this is how he calls her to the vault, right? He
Definitely.
plays the music, and it's "Red Rain" by Peter Gabriel. I had to Shazam that because I kind of recognized it, but and I knew like the era of music is probably around 80s or so, but I didn't recognize the song. And when I saw who it was, I was like, oh, that's why I don't really like Peter Gabriel songs, so I don't really listen to a lot of his music. So that explains why I didn't know it. But he tells her about firefighter suits. He sounds really excited, right? He's like, I had an idea. You can go get this. And they have air tanks. And he points out when she says, oh, no, that's not going to do it. Firefighter suits aren't meant to keep you alive outside. And he points out, well, cleaning suits aren't meant to keep you alive either, which is a good point. But I found this scene really touching because he's clearly lonely and he likes talking to her, right? So
Yeah, I think he does want to help her, and I think he you know, she was nice to him and she's non-threatening to him, and so I think he really like feels bad that he's like conflicted between his job that he's obviously done and his fear of like outsiders, which is probably pretty deeply ingrained, but also that he sees like her struggling.
okay, so he tells her that there's fire safety equipment and engineering on 70 and 23, and then next, and she asks where on 23, and he says next to recycling. And so that I think confirms that the silo level, the levels of departments are the same in the silos because I think I had said in a previous episode that IT in silo 18 is on level 19. And IT being on 19 and silo 17 would make sense because the water is a few levels. The water level, the flooding is like a few levels down. So,
Yeah.
and when she goes to go look, it looks like it's not completely submerged, like not like totally underwater. So if that's level 23, then that kind of makes sense that IT is on 19 if it's a few levels down.
Yeah, I never got the impression that like the silos would be laid out differently. I think, you know, if you're building 50 silos, like you're probably just gonna
Yeah,
copy
make
and
them all the
paste one
same.
silo to the
Yeah,
next. So
yeah.
yeah, that she knows kind of where she's going makes sense, and that she needs to be told where some things are also makes sense because she didn't really come from this area of the silos, so she wouldn't necessarily know like the details of every level up here.
Well, actually, she grew up there, right?
Didn't she grow
And
up in like the mids?
oh, the mids. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, when I think about how deep the silo is and I cut it in half, I think this is higher than that, really. But
Mm, yeah, that's true. It's easy to forget about the mids. There's a lot of levels in between, right?
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it goes back to Billings and Meadows, and he's waking her up in the middle of the night, and telling her about his report on how he can't get anyone to verify that she actually said it. Just people saying that if she said it, I wasn't there, but she must have said it. And then he says that if there was any doubt, there should have been an inquiry. So he's like putting out there that the way that things went down is kind of sus, right? So,
I'm kind of confused about this though because I thought he said that four of the five people did confirm she said it,
oh, did
and
he?
then it was just the one
The
that.
one. Oh, okay, maybe I misheard.
Yeah, I think that was what it was supposed to imply, and I think the one who
Okay.
didn't confirm it is supposed to
Was
be that
the girl he
woman
was
we
talking to
saw.
earlier. Yeah, okay. So she goes back in her apartment and she brings out this pretty high tech looking projector. It's like there's just this cute little box, right? And she just taps the top and it starts playing on like some curtain in her apartment. And she's watching a home movie at the beach with ocean waves and she just starts cycling through a bunch of them. Um,
Yeah, there's one with snow, one with a
Yeah,
horse.
a horse and a birthday party, and like we mentioned earlier, it seems to be all videos of children, right? So now I'm starting to wonder if like if she lost a child in the past, and that, or maybe the two of them, because I don't know, there's something going on between them, right? It's I don't know. Okay, but I did want to say that really like the score in this part of the episode. It was very melancholy and yet ominous at the same time, and it was fitting because it segues right into like what's going on in the Down Deep. They're going to go get Teddy back from custody. Knox and Hank are there to stop them, and they have a bunch of new deputies, and things get really heated.
Yep, they're shouting.
And then while they're fighting, they show Patrick, and he's in the back, and he throws a Molotov cocktail basically, and then so I had missed this the first time I watched because it was so chaotic. I don't think I just understood that somebody shot and somebody killed Cooper, but basically I think Smalls was specifically there to kill Patrick after he threw that firebomb so that he couldn't talk. So he wasn't going to like drug him like he was talking about. He was just going to have him killed because what happens is he throws the firebomb and or Coop was shoved to the back by accident during the shuffle, and he sees Patrick just as he's about to do it. He yells at him, "Don't do it!" And then he's struggling with Patrick when Smalls points his gun. He looks like he's specifically aiming for somebody, And I think he was specifically aiming for Patrick, and then he killed Cooper by accident because he was trying to stop him. So that's how he died.
Yeah, I just assumed he knew, like he knew where it had come from and he was shooting in that direction. But I only watched it once, so like it was a pretty chaotic scene.
Yeah, yeah. No, but if you go back and look, he's looking straight at Patrick in the back, and he fires at him, but I think he misses, and that's how Cooper dies.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's no way that that all wasn't orchestrated by Sims,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like Bernard said he didn't do it, and I kind of believed him. Like he was pretty earnest when he said that wasn't him.
Oh,
Because Meadows asks him, I think, or just kind of grills him about it later, right?
yeah. I actually thought he was lying about that too, because Bernard lies a lot, so I can't tell. I was very moved by Coop's death. Just the way that Shirley and Knox were reacting was very convincing. It was very sad. And he's just a
Yeah,
teenager, right? He's so young, and
that's what got me about it. He was kind of
yeah,
in over his head. It felt like he was going along with everything because he knew them
yeah,
and he was
yeah.
passionate.
And he was just following along with his friends and going by how he felt, right? And he was grieving too because Jules was his mentor, right? So, and I don't know. I'm really not looking forward to when she learns that he died. Okay, next they go back to Dr. Nichols, and he's looking at his computer, and it says that, and it just so happens that the lady wins the lottery, which I thought
Yeah,
was
that
eh.
I couldn't tell, like, so I guess everything's already settled by the time he's looking at his computer, but I honestly had a moment in my mind where I was like, wait, does he get to pick the person?
Yeah,
But
that's
that
what I
wouldn't make
thought
any
too.
sense, right?
Yeah,
Like I thought he picked her because she moved him, and then once she was picked, it said that whole thing about how, oh, the winner Phoebe Wells must only think her birth control is
yeah,
removed but not actually removed.
yeah. Because I don't know, it just felt like too coincidental that just so happens that the lady he meets
It
in the
was
garden.
definitely too coincidental. Yeah. That would just be kind of really hokey writing in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. So that I don't know. I mean, it would have made more sense, like how you said that he actually arranged it, that she won.
He did seem disappointed though when he saw that it was
Yeah,
supposed to be birth control not actually removed. What did you make
yeah.
of the thing underneath it or next to it that said code silo orange?
Um, I I didn't really think about it, but now that you say it, maybe that's like like how we have like the DEF CON thing. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe
Cuz
it's
I'm
like an
wondering
alert.
like I was wondering why it said that they it should not her birth control should not actually be removed because I was like, does that mean she's one of those like undesirable
Like
people who can
Allison.
never have a kid? Yeah, like Allison, or is it just because like the silo right now is in like a weird state of upheaval and they don't even want to
There's the
run
birth
this
freeze.
lottery? But in which case, like, why would you even announce a bonus lottery then? Because that wouldn't make any sense. I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, this whole plot line is strange because it just feels like long game in a point where like you don't know what's going to happen in the immediate future, right? So it feels like it's one of those things where why are they doing this right now when there's like a lot of shit going on, right? And it's not like a birth is an instant thing there, and not even guaranteed, right? It's just permission to have the silos version of unprotected sex. Basically, it's not like you take this thing out and boom, she's pregnant.
Yeah, I can only imagine this is going to keep becoming more and more relevant, just like we didn't really know what the scene in episode 2 was with Dr. Nichols, and now we're maybe not sure what's going on here.
After that, Shirley and Knox meet in the cavern down below, and and they're grieving over Cooper. This was one of my favorite scenes. Knox says, "You want to punch something? Punch me!" And oh my god, did she punch him? He deserved that.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting her to just full on like sock him.
Right in the gut too. But he tells her that she's not the only one who's angry, and then Shirley tells him again that she thinks that Julia is still alive. Then he brings up the wall of names. He says, "You remember that wall of names that we found when we were kids? I think I know what that means now." But I have no idea what he's talking about. And I have no idea what
Yeah,
it could possibly mean.
I don't remember them ever mentioning this.
I mean, maybe they didn't, and this is like their first mention of it, but I don't know how it could be important or relevant.
If it's the first mention, it feels a little like clunky unless you're supposed to sort of use all those mentions they make of sort of wandering around when they were younger, like as kind of illusions that they found weird stuff or something.
Okay, next they go back to Bernard and Meadows, and he's talking about how he's planning to get her outside without any knowing. And I was completely shocked by this. Caught me totally off guard. I had no idea that Meadows meant I want to go outside like now. Because she said, I want you to set some tape aside for me. And I think that made me think that she meant like later, you know, like much later after everything had settled down and or something. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I agree that I didn't think she meant like this instant. I'm not sure how long I thought out she meant. Like I set aside did kind of give the implication that it would be sometime in the future. So I thought
Mhm.
she kind of seems like she wants to go out soon, but yeah, I didn't think she'd push him so hard on this topic, like so
Yeah.
fast, especially with everything going on.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty selfish too. Like, I know you've got a whole silo to control, but can you please go make my suit right now? So he says that he has his own suit, which I thought was interesting. That he oh god, I said interesting. But he says that he has his own suit, so it's kind of like he has like what is it for? Is it for emergencies, or does he actually have to go outside first to do certain things, or is it
And if
like
it's for
you're on a plane
emergencies,
that's gonna go down and like you make sure that you're the only one with a parachute kind of thing? Or
well, but if it's for emergencies, like I feel like it has to be better than the suits they send people with because even then like when you looked at Juliet when she first entered Silo 17, like that tape was like becoming disgusting and
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know, like it didn't seem like it was actually even with good tape that you were actually supposed to be able to be out there like surviving for too long.
yeah. It looked kind of old and worn out, right?
Yeah, like it had been being eaten away by
Like
something maybe.
degraded. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's like poison in the air or whatever. But yeah, so like I don't know what he would use a suit for. Like if his silo dies, or if his silo is going to shit, can he just leave? Is there some back door?
He says it in such like an a really like matter of fact way like oh as you know I have like
Yeah,
my own
yeah.
suit like in a way that made it seem like this is just very standard and that heads of IT or whatever have their own suits.
And what shadows don't get.
Well they
uh,
might but he doesn't have a shadow anymore.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, so he says he's gonna make the her suit himself, just for like security's sake. He brings out a tape measure. This scene was so weird to me.
That whole scene was weird like the way they talked to one another was weird, the
It's very
cinematography was
suggestive.
weird, the dialogue was weird. I don't
The
know
looks
that
they gave to each other too.
yes, the whole time he was measuring her was just really, really weird.
Yeah, it was very awkward. I felt very uncomfortable watching it. I don't know why. But I got more of the impression that we're supposed to think that they had some kind of thing in the past outside of their professional relationship. But I don't know. I don't feel any kind of connection between them, even in like a platonic or professional manner. They just I don't know. The two of them together are just very strange. They interact very oddly with each other.
Yeah, I agree.
It's
I can't tell if it's intentional or not. It'd be really good if it were intentional. Like,
yeah, yeah.
they would be setting up something really good there. But yeah, I just felt the whole thing felt really awkward to me.
Yeah. If it's not intentional, it's not working for me. So then Meadows confronts Bernard about Jules saying she never wanted to go out. And then she kicks him out and tells him not to come back without her suit. So she's very bossy.
I don't know why she keeps confronting him about that. I don't know what she is
I
getting
don't
out of it.
either.
Like, maybe it's what you're saying. Maybe she plans on, like, I don't know, blackmailing him or threatening him in some way.
Like, do you think she's gonna reveal that and then leave? Like, is that her like last fuck you to him before she goes outside? which
And
is
like,
kind
who
of,
would she reveal it to who would care and have more power than he does?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, you said it earlier. Where is Meadows going? I don't know. She's a mystery. Jules goes back to the vault to plan how to get the fire suit from out of the water, but she says she needs Solo's help because she needs air to be pumped down to her.
This struck me as a really odd thing to say. Like, for someone who literally can't swim at all, she's really gung ho about this idea of like making an underwater breathing apparatus so that she can go underwater to find something that she doesn't even know where it is. And how would she get there or do any of this? I don't know. That whole line, I was like shocked by it.
Yeah. You would think she'd be like, I need you to go down there and get it. I'll pump air to you.
Or like perhaps I should learn to swim first. I don't know.
Yeah. Although that water must be pretty gross. Because, I mean, didn't. No, she kept the bodies on the bridge. Yeah. I thought she dumped the bodies in the water. But I don't know. I would think that,
I'm sure there are bodies in the
yeah, there
water.
must be bodies down there, right? So, ooh, yeah, gross. But Silo, so, oh my God, I called him Silo. Solo won't come out to help her, and he admits that he doesn't open the door when she's around. So he does come out, just not when she's there. And she begs him to help her get home and save her Silo, and he says he can't. So then she closes the double doors and reads that message that we had seen in the trailer and in the first episode. It says we will get in sooner or later, and she seems to realize something, and then she thanks him for the food, and then she tells him bye. So it kind of seemed like it was a significant, she came to some kind of realization. So what do you think that was?
I I couldn't tell if she just came to the realization that, you know, he's had a tough time of it and he's been threatened before and she should just sort of leave him alone and she's never going to get anything out of him because clearly people have tried to do this before and it hasn't worked. Or if she was playing him and she knew
Yeah, to
that if
get him
she
out.
like kind of walked away and didn't push him, she'd like get him out.
Ah, yeah, that's true. So I don't know because I think maybe one possibility is that she has been friendly with this guy, she's been bonding with him, but then she realizes that these fresher bodies and that sign mean that he's had battles outside that vault. He hasn't just stayed in there like how he seems to be claiming, and that he's probably dangerous, right? And that he's killed people himself because they clearly wrote that note for him, but they're dead and they're out there, not outside.
Yeah, I'm not sure like her intent, like or like what she's thinking about this, but I do think she realizes that she's not going to get anything out of him like standing there and like begging him and pushing him. So I think she just is like either way, I have to go do something and if he's going to come out, he's going to come out and if he's not, he's not and
Hmm.
I don't have time for this anymore.
Yeah. I love the way he called out to her. He sounded so desperately sad, and I felt really bad for him.
Yeah, I felt really bad from the whole episode.
Very effective guilt tripping, Juliet. Good job. Okay, and then they go back to Dr. Nichols. He's prepping for the procedure, and it's the woman in the garden. And they show how he does the switch, which isn't very like elaborate. He just has a second birth control in like that bloody like little tin or whatever, and he's supposed to hold it up and show like, oh, here, I took it out, yay. But then he actually removes her thing, and I don't know, this I mean, I think we all saw this coming a mile away, so it wasn't a surprise.
I think like yeah, it wasn't a surprise. I think it was more of a question of like whether he would go through with it or not because he does hesitate.
Hmm.
So I think it was one of those
Yeah.
like just watching his thought process as he goes through like, yeah, I want to do it. Oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't. But actually, yes, I'm going to.
Mm. And then he says, I hope you have a girl, which, oh. All right, and so it comes to the last scene, and she's going out to her bridge, and Solo calls her, and then you hear Solo behind her, and he says, "Don't go." And then they show him out there. He's actually come out, and he's the first thing he says when she turns around and sees him is, "Do I look bad?" And oh my god, I felt so sad for him because he looked so self-conscious and like, oh my god, how do I look kind of thing. Like, very sad.
Yeah, he's very sweet, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely it's sad because it's definitely a result of like his loneliness and his trauma.
Hmm.
I do just want to hug him.
Yeah, I do want to hug him. He's not gonna want hugs. He's not ready for hugs, but you really just want to hug him. He looks very huggable. But yeah, so he looks up and he's just marveling at how big the silo is. And then she tries to help him across the bridge, and he freaks out when she touches him. He says it's not her fault. It's just been a long time since he's had any human contact, obviously. And then he says, "You really are here, aren't you?" And he just sounds so like sadly hopeful that he finally has an actual person he can talk to. So I really like this scene. I really like Steve Zahn's portrayal so far.
I liked the scene a lot, but I was very distracted the whole time because they were literally like sitting on her makeshift bridge and like the silo was like making like groaning noises around them and
Yeah, yeah,
I
you
was
can
just
hear
like for
it.
every I was like sad, but at the same time I was just like, "Oh no." Like I knew it wasn't going to like collapse, but I was just like, I don't know, my brain cannot let go of this idea that like, why don't you just go to one side of the bridge or the other?
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah. The
god.
stairs are right behind you. Go over there. So, community reaction to Steve's on. What have you been seeing?
It seems like everyone really loves him, which I can totally get on board with. I
Mm-hmm.
agree. I think he's doing a great job as that, like, with the loneliness and the trauma. He's like also just like trying so hard. Like Solo is
Yeah,
trying so hard to like make that connection. He's always like approachable, reasonable. I don't know. I love him.
yeah. Because like all the ways that he like when he calls her to the vault to tell her about the firefighter suits, he just sounds so excited. Like I had this idea. What do you think? It's very like I want to be friends kind of vibe to him.
Yeah, he clearly has like a connection with her already. Um, and it's yeah, it's really sweet.
I love his solo. I had mentioned in the last episode that I thought maybe this episode was going to be the book that I had beta read for Hugh. It turned out to be partially true, but I do really have an emotional attachment to Solo, and he's been a character that I've really looked forward to seeing. And he's knocked it out of the park so far. His voice is really gentle and yet sad. Yeah, I really like it so far. Okay, Judge Meadows. I think we had said last episode that, or I had said that it's a little too early to be judging her, judging Judge Meadows. But we've seen a lot of her this episode. So what are you thinking with her?
Yeah, I think there are some if we're talking about like community reactions, I think there are a bunch of like kind of open questions about what's coming up with her. Um I was uh putting aside for a second like the awkwardness between her and Bernard, even without that, like just their dialogue in other scenes, it really just makes me think that Bernard is like entirely sick of her shit. Especially kind of the grief she was giving him this episode about some of his choices. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he has like a plan to use her wanting to go out to like get rid of her. I saw some mentions in the subreddit of people questioning whether he was going to give her good tape or bad tape, and I hadn't thought of that myself, but then once someone said it like that, like a light bulb went off in my head and I was like, well, yeah, that makes total sense that he might just give her the bad tape or give her a bad suit or do some other thing to sabotage her.
Yeah, so one of our members in the Dundee Discord, Zach, he said that he thinks that he's going to let Meadows go out secretly and he'll turn off the screens, but then he's going to give her faulty tape so that she'll die with the suit in sight, and then he'll turn on the screens and say, "Oh, look, there's Juliet Nichols. She really is dead." Which sounds like a pretty sound theory. That
Yeah,
would
that,
be
that
pretty
does sound
diabolical.
completely plausible. Yeah, especially given how that we know how quickly he came up with like a great idea to turn around her leaving to begin with.
Yeah.
I think he's quick on his feet that way. I think he could do that.
That sounds like it's possible to me too. So, all right, so that's it for the breakdown. Just a reminder that this episode came out early because of the Thanksgiving holiday week and Black Friday and everything this weekend. But the next episode is going back to the regular schedule, so it's not going to be out until December 6th. So next Thursday night slash Friday morning, basically. Okay. What have you been up to? I mean, actually, it's only been like a few days since we last recorded, so I don't know if we need to talk about this. But I finished Bosch. I started Bosch Legacy, and I'm almost done with that. Really enjoying that show. I recommend that for anybody who likes crime dramas.
I don't even have much that I've been doing. I'm crocheting a blanket for my dad's Christmas gift, so I've been watching stuff that I can like safely ignore half of, so I can be looking down at my stitches. So I'm catching up on like just kind of background stuff, like the last season of MasterChef, and rewatching some TV shows that like will probably have new seasons coming out next year.
Okay, so a bit of self promo. Angela and I have mentioned in the past that we're both editors. My business, Pico's House, offers a comprehensive slate of services for fiction authors, including alpha and beta reading, developmental editing and critique, line editing and copy editing, and proofreading. If you're interested in my services, you can find my website at www.picoshouse.com.
I'm the owner of Lambda Editing, and I specialize in editing services for self published authors. I'm a self published author myself, and I love enabling other authors to polish their work and get it out there. My website is www.lambdaediting.com.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Wires from the Deep. If you're enjoying our podcast, be sure to tell other Silo fans that they can find us at wiresfromthedeep.com and then leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice. You can join conversations about the show on the Silo series subreddit or on the Down Deep Discord, and you can join our Friday night watch parties. And this past yesterday, I launched our first Silo quiz. So if you want to join our Discord and take part in that, I ran like a 10-question quiz and it was pretty fun. So yeah, be sure to join us for that. I'm gonna probably do the next quiz right after the next watch party. The watch party is gonna be on Saturday this week. So if you want to contact me or Angela, you can leave a comment on Podbean or one of our YouTube videos, or you can email us at crystal@thedownddeep.net. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.